I'm out here having a hike on a sort of a drizzly morning, and as I'm making my way into the woodlot, I found signs of a mammal that moved here before me. So I'll show you. It's scat. So because of its ropey appearance, we know that it was a mammal from the wild, and I'll have to look it up. Maybe it's a fox, because I've seen lots of coyote scat along these trails, but in this particular case its diameter is much smaller. So anyway, that's kind of a neat thing. So we are sort of following in the tracks of a fox. Hope you join me on today's hike. So I'm continuing along on the same trail, and I see another, some more evidence of scat. Now that, I believe, is coyote. Not sure how well you could see it, but there was hair in it, so that gives rise to its diet shows up in its bowel movement. So anyway, animals will leave that along the trails they use to communicate with other members of the same species to let them know, it's my trail, beware. So anyway, that's cool, because they're both fresh, so it looks like they're probably both deposited overnight. So I believe that's called bladder nut, right here. I look in openings because that's where animals can sometimes move about more freely to find food. Although in this case I don't see any, no mammals anyway. So it's the third week of November 2021, and we're hearing a lot of news in terms of unfortunate things that are happening out in British Columbia, which is where Vancouver is. And this past summer, they had reached record high temperatures, plus 40 degrees Celsius. And that would have made it very uncomfortable in a place that doesn't normally see temperatures much beyond plus, like in the mid-20s. So a lot of those folks did not have air conditioners because it doesn't tend to get very hot in the summertime. Now, that extreme heat led to perfect conditions for wildfires. And wildfires were happening also in the US along the West Coast in the state of California and beyond. So that's a phenomenon that was happening in British Columbia. But right now, they're facing another thing that is extremely rare, kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and that is over a period of 3 days, I don't know the number of millimeters of rain that fell, but it was through what is called an atmospheric river. That tends to be something that comes, an area of moisture in the atmosphere that comes from the south, so it's warm and there's a lot of moisture that can be held within it, and it flows like a river over a particular area. I think I read in the newspaper this morning something like it could have a swath as wide as 600 kilometers and as long as 2,000 kilometers. I'll correct that in editing if I got that wrong. The problem is, it didn't move on. It continued to stay and provide the deluge of rain over those 3 days. So that's led to an awful lot of flooding. There are some towns where a lot of farm animals have perished because of that. In an area of BC called Abbotsville, they have dairy cattle. They're hard animals to move out of flooded fields. So anyway, it's unfortunate. There's a lot of really negative effects that we're witnessing in our lifetime as a result of climate change, and that's after having had a summer of extreme heat in British Columbia. So the reason I wanted to bring that up is on this channel, oftentimes I bring you along on a hike or a paddle or a camping trip so you have a chance to see beautiful signs of nature. Now, unfortunately, this morning when I walked through the woods, I got to see all kinds of things, but I didn't have my camera up and ready. I got to see a buck. A couple of videos ago, I provided you with imagery of a buck that was in an urban setting because I couldn't find one in the woods. Well, today I found one in the woods, but I didn't have my camera ready. And then I came across a small herd of about 4 does. And then I came across 2 bald eagles, but I walked along, I saw them in a tree, I was getting my camera ready, and they took off one at a time. I listened, I could hear up in the air, it sounded like there might have been people or something. Turns out it was a flock of tundra swans as they're migrating back from the north. So there were all kinds of things going on in the woods today, and I like to provide you with those beautiful images with my video clips. But there's also a time to provide you with the reality of what's going on in the world. And now it feels like it's getting a little closer to home because it's happening here in my own country. So it leads to another thing. The other thing that this leads me to is the fact that oftentimes people will invest as much as they can into one financial asset, and that's their home. And we're going through a really incredible period in the housing market where houses are appreciating at a rate that's much faster than inflation, making it unaffordable for a lot of people. So then my thoughts turn back to BC, where Victoria, which is the capital of British Columbia, has the most expensive houses in Canada. Well, the surrounding area also has very expensive real estate, and the reason is it's a beautiful area. It's mountainous, lots of natural beauty with the ocean, forests that have trees that are hundreds of years old, and a nice wide variety of wildlife that depends on those things. And it's all within, if you're living in Vancouver, it's all within, a half-hour drive to get here, there, anywhere where there's a lot of beauty. But the problem is, those areas are getting hard hit by fires and by floods. So I don't know what's going to come of this. I don't know how this is going to affect things. Having come from the field of financial planning, I know one of the things that we tried to stress to clients is to not put all your eggs in one basket. One asset class, being real estate, as an example, or one particular kind of thing, like putting all your money into investments like banks. Because if something happens to that sector, then it makes yourself very vulnerable. So I'm looking at the folks who have these really expensive houses, probably have huge mortgages, because that seems to be the way to be able to afford a house, unfortunately, is by carrying a mortgage for a number of years. But then when you have these natural tragedies that take place, it leaves you really vulnerable. And I don't know how the insurance companies are going to be able to handle that, because they've already probably been coping with the wildfires for any property destruction, and now with floods. I don't know that those are in the same areas, probably not in the same areas, but very likely some of the same insurance companies are impacted. So I guess this is our wake-up call. Our wake-up call to say that we need to do some good planning to reduce the risk to our own, I guess, investments. And I don't know what the answer is. It's really wonderful to have waterfront property, but those seem to be really vulnerable in this day and age of active climate change. So just prepare yourself. I don't really want to say much more than that, because I do like to provide uplifting thoughts and provide you with beautiful scenery and wildlife experiences. It's making me feel a little heavy-hearted at this time, just seeing that there's a lot of people that are going to be struggling, and it's not just contained here in Canada. There's a lot of other countries that are going through flooding. Of course, we're all dealing with the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And you just hope that people can be there for each other. When you pass a person out on the trail or out on the sidewalk in the city, you don't know what they're carrying around. I guess it's just a matter of being kind, because you don't know what else is going on in their world. All right, I'll leave you with that.